Hi all, so thanks for joining this YouTube channel again where I talk through my sketchbooks. I haven't posted anything for quite a while and I actually came across this particular sketchbook only last week actually. It was buried in a box of books under my bed actually, so you know what it's like when you're sort of moving around and you're sort of looking for something else and then you find in my case, what turned out to be a sketchbook. So this one it's not a moleskin one, it's actually, I think it's probably like a Sea White of Brighton, if they still make them, I'm sure they do, from 2016. So this one covers, I did say that it is the lost sketchbook, and there's not that many pages in there. I think a moleskin one probably covers about 50 pages. This is probably only half that. But it was one that I'd sort of shelved away because it wasn't a moleskin, and it was a different dimension and different size. So I kind of squirreled it away somewhere else and basically forgot about it until now. So I just thought it might be quite fun to take you through. So basically, I bought this, as it says, at the beginning of 2016, and I was going through quite a lot of sketchbooks at the time, different sizes, different page thicknesses. Just to try and figure out where I was with the whole urban sketching thing. I hadn't yet found my way into using different coloured Posca pens, acrylic pens and markers and painting patches of background colour before I headed out. So these are very basic, but actually quite worthwhile in terms of the learning process. So I'm actually using coloured pens, and they are uniball pens, fine pens. So just a mixture of red, blue and black through this sketchbook. And also as well, on occasion, not very often though, these Pentel, I think it was a Pentel pen, black ones. So yeah, so I bought this and immediately got to work. I do actually remember this first sketch. It was just around the corner from Old Street roundabout in East London. And apologies because it's a very awkward size. I don't really know what compelled me to, instead of tackling landscape, as you would assume buying a landscape shaped sketchbook, you would sort of tackle it this way rather than that way. But I just wanted to do something different really and try and capture skyscrapers, high buildings of a city. And these ones, as you see, as I work through them, they're very much concentrating on a certain particular point, and then the rest of the lines just kind of lead off. So there's certain detailed elements, but I'm not filling the whole page like I do these days with the moleskin books that you see. So this one's Liverpool Street Station. A little bit of detail in there. Crowds passing by, very quick sketches. I think I was doing possibly 3 or 4 in one afternoon. So they're not the kind of things that that are sort of run against what I do nowadays, where I spend up to about an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, with really fine detail and making sure that I fill all the page. But these ones are they're almost sort of preparatory sketches, little bits of detail, having some fun. And also what I noticed as well, this one's just around the corner from Liverpool Street Station as well, train station. What I noticed was that I wasn't using the dot-to-dot method, where I'm sort of figuring out placements on the page, just literally with a dot, like I am these days. And then I can fill the rest in later to give me a rough idea. And it acts as a really good guide. This one I'm going sort of straight in. And this one as well, that's the George pub just around the corner from London Bridge Station. So that's the busy main road there, and then as you walk through on the cobbled street, the cobbled pathway, I should say, and then it opens out into a courtyard. I think it's meant to be one of the oldest pubs in London. There's lots of places that report to be the oldest pub in London, but this is certainly one of them, for sure. And the HS2 development around Tottenham Court Road that that finished only relatively recently. This went on for probably a decade or so. When I was still working in bookshops on Charing Cross Road, actually, they were just starting to tear down old buildings. This is near Denmark Street. And I think, I can't remember the name of this church actually, but it's the end of Denmark Street. The name escapes me. But it's just, again, looking at the detail. Obviously these days, if I was tackling this subject again, I would have maybe 2 coloured pens, you know, a lighter blue for the foreground, darker blue for the, the darker blue for the foreground and lighter blue for the background, as you've seen on quite a few of my posts. And this one again, Tottenham Court Road. So I'm actually whizzing through these, probably, as I said earlier, 3 or 4 in one afternoon, standing in different spots. This one is Charing Cross Road looking down towards Tottenham Court Road tube station. So there's all this kind of building work going on, members of the public on diversion routes, traffic lights kind of taped up because they're not in use. And this one is Soho Square. So again, I'm just sort of only tackling a small bit of it, really. Really trying to get some ideas down very quickly, and getting used to using these pens. They're really nice ones, actually. I might sort of go back to them at some stage, Uniball ones. I'm always on the lookout for new pens and things to use, different materials. And this one is just around the corner. I think it's more closer to the banking district, the financial district of the city. And this particular building caught my eye. So there's only a couple of sketches from when me and 2 of my friends, Ed and Melissa, went on an American road trip around the Deep South in 2016. This would have been about May time. And we were away for nearly 2 weeks, and we covered quite a distance. We started off in New Orleans and drove through to Memphis and Nashville, and then up to the Smoky Mountains, went to Dollywood, spent a couple of days around that area, and then drove back down to Destin in Florida, and then ended up back swinging through New Orleans again. So it was a big circle, 2,000-mile circle. So lots of driving. But this was the first night in New Orleans. This was the view from my Airbnb window. I just stayed there for one night. Those 2 were already out there at a jazz festival. So I joined them, and the next day we hit the road. So these next few are from that travel around. This was a really nice early morning one in Memphis, just opposite the Sun Studio. The original recording studio for, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis, most famously. So that was a really nice hour or so sketch. And I guess in hindsight, I could have done maybe that version and then a landscape version, just to give you the sort of depth. It would have had more depth, I suppose, if I'd have panned across maybe. But it's a tiny building. It's a really good one to document and sketch, just to say that I've been there. And then walking up to Memphis, this is the same morning, through the city, this little alleyway that led into a car park, but just some of the buildings that really interested me, stacked together, that you see so often in America, old and new. And one that I started that I never really finished. So this is me kind of starting to gain my confidence. I'm not getting into the coloured pens. We're not quite there yet with experimenting in that sort of medium, but B.B. King Avenue, just thought it might be quite a nice one to document. And I guess the intention with this one was to carry on this line work all the way down, but I guess I ran out of time or patience. I didn't quite have the patience that I have now. Actually, that's developed over time. And this one was in the the Blue Ridge Mountains, I think. Smoky Ridge Mountains. It was we went to Dollywood and we stayed in a lodge, and the weather was really close, really hot, and we actually had a thunderstorm that evening, so we didn't go out anywhere. So we just got some beers in and stayed in the hot tub on the balcony. But it was a great evening, so the next day I just documented the view from the balcony there. And this one, when we eventually came back, we stayed in a motel in New Orleans, so that was the view from the highway there. So these ones were very quick. They didn't take that long because we were doing other things, but it was just really nice to document at least a little bit of it. And the obligatory quick sketch of a plane that took me home. So then we're back in London at St Bartholomew's in Farringdon. So again, we're dealing with lots of detail, and then it sort of veers off to the page there. So these didn't really take that long at all, but I guess looking back, they're just documenting certain alleyways, certain little points of interest in all these little side streets of London, things that I'd wanted to document. And really, I'm just at the beginning of gaining my confidence, I suppose. So whether it was a choice of me wanting to sit there or not for an hour and a half or 2 hours maybe, I think that came much later. These were just wanting to get things down on the page, really. Seeing if I could achieve 3, possibly 4 in one day, in one afternoon. And this was at the end of my road, actually, in southeast London, in New Cross, near Peckham. This is actually the fire station that's still there. It still operates as a fire station, but it's a beautiful building. So there's actually a bus stop here. So very early one morning, I just came down and sat there and did a sketch. That one took me quite a while, actually, because I wanted to be a little bit more accurate with this. Probably about an hour or so. And this one, in a later Moleskine sketchbook, possibly sketchbook 8 or 9, obviously from a different, because it's different dimensions in those Moleskine ones. This, I just wanted to emphasise a certain end of this building. This is in Regent Street, near Piccadilly Circus, and that's Eyre Street, where you sort of walk through onto Regent Street. A little walkway. So I sort of filled that out in more detail, probably about 4 or 5 years later. So some I do return back to. So some I do remember, and they're in the back of my mind, and I'm just almost kind of logging in as much detail as I can. And it's a very busy road, as you can imagine, leading up to Piccadilly Circus, lots of traffic. And again, it's just a test for me, to make sure I'm not getting in people's way, and making sure I'm sort of standing out of the way of people, and getting down as much as I can. This one was just a very quick sketch outside a pub in Greenwich, the Plume of Feathers. Just a quiet afternoon. And this is actually a church in Bloomsbury. It's just opposite the British Museum. And you can see I had 2 attempts. Didn't quite get it right on the first one. And to be honest, I don't really think I got it right on the second one either. It's kind of veering off to the right. It's a beautiful church. I've never been inside, but you can see it when you're walking around Bloomsbury itself. It's a very unusual tower with these structures, these animals, unicorns and elephants, etc. And if I'm getting this right, I think it's the architect Thomas Hawksmoor. The surname is definitely Hawksmoor, and he was a student of Sir Christopher Wren, who of course designed and built St Paul's Cathedral, among many other buildings in London. This one's back in Greenwich again. So you can see I'm just sort of working out the detail of barges and different things, and really just working out placements of buildings so that I'm not, I think I'm getting a little bit more accurate as this sketchbook goes along, even though it's not a particularly thick one, not too many pages, but I can see my confidence building very slowly. And I'm still reverting back to black pen every now and again. And this one as well, in Greenwich, just around the corner from that actually. This is an old, the top of a very old power station, huge power station, not a power station anymore, but I think we're coming towards the end, maybe just a couple more pages. This is the church. This area is pedestrianised now. It's just around the corner from Somerset House. So again, I'm just concentrating on certain bits of detail here, getting as much detail down as possible. And I'm probably setting myself a time limit actually, if I remember this rightly, of just spending maybe an hour, no longer than an hour, possibly an hour and a half, and then deciding, okay, that's enough for that, and then leaving it. Whereas these days I would just continue on and making sure I fill up the whole page. And this is just one sketchbook. I took several sketchbooks with me in 2016 to Krakow. I've been several times with my brother and his friend. So there are sketchbooks with drawings in that cover those particular periods. But this is the only one with the landscape dimension. And it works really well. It's the castle at the top of the hill in the sort of old town district of Krakow. So lots of really nice detail there. I actually landed in Krakow a couple of hours before they did. Took separate flights. So I had a little bit of time to kill. And the fourth plinth in London. So we have Nelson's column in the background. And the fourth plinth is famously left empty for artists and designers, people to put their work. Not sure who did this one. I'm going to say Anthony Gormley, but I'm probably wrong. So apologies if I am. But I just thought that was worth a sketch. And I think that's probably it. I think we've got one last one. Yeah, that's the Clink Museum. Just around the corner again from London Bridge Station, a really tight alleyway. And it particularly at the time, because there was lots of building work, so you can see all the scaffolding that's been covered up. So I thought that might make an interesting sketch, and with these dimensions as well of the sketchbook. So that's it, folks. That's it's a very short one, very brief, but I just thought I'd put this on the YouTube channel as well, because it is worthwhile in terms of what I'm sketching at this particular point in 2016 and my travels. So I thought I'd pop that one on. So leave some lovely comments, and thanks again, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers.